What's good, people? It's your boy N.I.C. coming to you live on a Thursday. Another Thursday, we here. Plenty to be thankful for. So let's start off that with being very, very thankful. As the Knicks should be after getting the win last night against the Dallas Mavericks. They end up winning by 2. Controversial ending. Dallas, no Cooper Flag. They got no Kyrie. They've got no Anthony Davis, which is not a surprise because, as we know, Anthony Davis is rarely available. Street clothes, as they like to call him. He, started off the season, and I don't know, was it the first or second game? But soon after that, he was out of commission. He continues to be out of commission, so that's kind of what you expect. One of the reasons why the Luka Doncic trade was like the stupidest trade in the history of the world, because you trade him, the best player that you get back is a guy who can't be on the floor. We know that Luka had his issues as far as being in shape. We know that Luka, a lot of people didn't feel like he was always the best teammate. He bitches and complains to the refs too much, but he's a transcendent generational talent. So anybody who felt like it was time to move on from Luka Doncic, and by anybody, I mean Nico Harrison, because he seems to be the only person that felt like it was time to move on from Luka Doncic. They're crazy to me. And Nico's out. He's I guess Mark Cuban was talking shit about him. Now he's talking shit about Mark Cuban. There's a new article. I think there's going to be a lot that comes out in these next few months as far as just, that last little, few months before Luka ends up getting traded to the Lakers and how that all played out. It'll be interesting to see. But last night the Knicks, the Knicks found a way to win, man. They found a way to win. And I'm a big believer in when you go out there and you win ugly, quite often that is the sign of a good team. I think it is good to learn how to win. Sometimes when you play a team without their stars, they're extra hungry. These guys are out here and they feel like they should be starters and contributors in this league. They've been the best player on their team basically their entire life until they get to the NBA. And now you find yourself watching. And quite often what you see is when you get those guys, you get them on a national TV, ESPN game against the Knicks. I don't care what y'all say. Y'all can, throw all the hate our way you want. The Knicks move the needle. You see it definitely when teams come into the Garden, but you also see it when the Knicks are on the road. People get up to play against the Knicks. They know that there's going to be extra eyeballs on them. New York and that market, media-wise, they speak for themselves. And the Mavs came out, and they played hard from the beginning. They were hitting a bunch of threes, which they do not typically do. The Knicks could not buy a three. The Knicks end up going, what was the final number? 3-point attempts, 12 for 42, 28.6%. Dallas, on the other hand, went 16 for 44. They shot 36.4%, and it was actually quite the fall off in the second half and in the fourth quarter because earlier in the game, they were just destroying the Knicks from behind the arc. But the Knicks were able to go into halftime with a 2-point lead when at that point, I believe they were 3 for 21 or 3 for 20 from behind the 3-point line, and they go in with a 2-point lead. Jalen Brunson, he makes his return. You could tell he did not want to lose on the road to Dallas again. The Knicks have lost to Dallas 3 times since Brunson has been on the team. One time he was out due to injury. The other 2 times he caught the L. And clearly Dallas is the team that gave up on him once upon a time and allowed the Knicks to be able to sign him for a deal that is now, laughed at when you look at the overall value of Brunson compared to that initial deal. And then he goes and he signs up for the home team discount to be able to get his guys in there. And, the rest is history on the Knicks side. But Dallas has a team that plays hard, and you got to give credit to Jason Kidd there. Jason Kidd, who many people that are around the Knicks organization say the Knicks absolutely wanted him to be their head coach this year. But, Dallas wouldn't let him out of his contract, wouldn't even let him interview with the Knicks, as they really should not have. And, the Knicks were requesting to speak to everybody, getting denied by most of them, and they end up with Mike Brown. Mike Brown in the early season, the Knicks are now 9-5. It's the best 14-game start they've had in quite some time. They're third in the East. Detroit has won 10 in a row, or is it 11 in a row? I'm pretty sure they're 11-2. And then you got the Raptors at 10-5 in the second seed, and the Knicks are currently in the third. It's early. Until you're 20, 25 games in, there's only so much that you can take from, records and things like that. But as somebody who has studied and followed this team my entire life and has paid a lot of attention to them in every single game, as well as the preseason, quite often I go back and watch, some of the games a second time, a little bit of film study. And the Knicks have definitely made some strides on offense. There's definitely still some room to grow. But they have also shown some glaring weaknesses. The three-point defense has to be better. It was a huge weakness last year. Many people, including myself, blame Tibbs for that and his guard the paint and, don't give up shots in the restricted area philosophy. A lot of us blamed Tibbs for that. And now it's a new year, it's a new coach, and the Knicks still seem to be a step slow when it comes to guarding the three. It seems like most teams can come up, and if one guy gets beat and they make a swing, somebody's wide open. Quite often, they're over-helping. You have guys with their feet in the paint trying to load up for a guy that's on the opposite wing, and now when that guy makes his move, he's one pass away, and that person on the opposite wing or in the corner, they're shooting what is a wide open three in the NBA. Brunson is one of the biggest offenders on this. It drives me nuts sometimes when they're just helping for no reason. They're not attached close enough to their man to be able to deal with him being just one pass away and being able to get off a three. And guess what? In today's NBA, most guys are going to hit that three, man. Everybody can shoot nowadays. Everybody. And I watch a guy like D'Angelo Russell who shows flashes but has not lived up to the potential that he had and that you expected for him coming out of college. I wanted the Knicks to get Russell so badly. He was taken with the 3rd overall pick. Or was he taken with the 2nd overall pick that year? Cat was the 1st pick. He ends up finding his way to the Knicks at some point. And then D'Angelo Russell, I know that he was picked before the Knicks were able to get Porzingis with the 4th pick. And I wanted D'Angelo Russell so bad. I thought that dude was going to be just a dynamite pro. When you watched him in school, I mean, he went to Ohio State. When you watched him, man, it's a 2017 draft. So Karl Anthony Towns is the 1st overall pick. D'Angelo Russell was the 2nd overall pick to the Lakers. Jahlil Okafor, another guy who in college just seemed like he was going to be a stud, but just never was able to put it all together in the pros. And then Porzingis, a guy who nobody heard of. You had kids crying at the draft, and the Knicks were able to actually find a pretty damn good player. We know it didn't work out for him in New York, but he did get himself a ring over in Boston. And overall, man, you got to say the Knicks dodged a bullet. The fact that they were able to, pivot from Porzingis into Julius Randle and then to Karl Anthony Towns. I know not everybody thinks that's the best trade in the world. I know a lot of people got a lot to say about Cat. Me personally, I think that Cat is a better fit for us than Julius. But I watched D'Angelo Russell yesterday get hot, and it seems like the Knicks are a step slow to recognize that, hey, this guy's hot. We can't go underneath on screens with him anymore. We can't help off of him anymore. We need to be on top of our game and make sure that we neutralize him, because I'm pretty sure he had a 16-point quarter. Killed us. Absolutely killed the Knicks yesterday. But at the end, the Knicks are able to get enough stops. They're able to hit a free throw or two. The free throw shooting yesterday was not very good. I'll go ahead and say that it was horrid. The Knicks missed 5 of their last 6 free throws down the stretch with the game on the line. Landry Shamet, he hits 2 massive threes. Brunson does a good job of giving up the rock when the Dallas Mavericks and Jason Kidd are trying to blitz him, get it out of his hand. He makes the correct pass to Shamet. Shamet hits it, and he hits a couple threes. But then when he gets fouled late, he goes to the line. Choke job, misses 2. Not good. It's not good at all. But with all that being said, the Knicks still found a way to get a dub. Dallas has the ball with 2 seconds left. Knicks, there's only a few seconds left. I think it was actually 3 and change. Dallas had no timeouts. Jason Kidd, what are you doing? You can't challenge and you can't advance the ball. I saw a play earlier where the Knicks scored and they scored. Dallas scored and he called a quick timeout because I guess he wanted to make a point. And I thought to myself, yo, man, you don't got enough timeouts to be doing no shit like that. You got to make sure that, you got something left in the tank and you got another timeout at the end. Well, guess what? Came back to bite him. Brandon Williams goes the length of the court. Landry Fields gets in front of him. Some say there was a bump. I think it was legal contact. And then, for absolutely no reason at all, Brandon Williams decides to hook Landry Shamet. He goes up for the layup. It looks like it's going to be an and one. The ref very emphatically says, no, he hooked him. We're going that way. The game's over. 0.7 left. Knicks get it inbounded, and they walk away with a dub on the road. Their first road victory of the season. That's another trend about the Knicks that I don't love. They got to get better on the road. Hey, 7-1 at the Garden. We love that part. I'm sorry, 8-1 at the Garden. But, yeah, they get their first road win. Hopefully it's the first of many. We got a new coach. We got some new pieces. And we start out 9-5. Can't be too mad at that. But the defense against the three-point shot must improve immediately. Shout to everybody in the chat. Hey, tell me, how we feeling about the Knicks? If you have questions about anything, I don't care if it's about sports. I don't care if it's about life. I don't care if it's about current events. Whatever the case may be, throw it in the chat. I promise you I will respond. I do not promise to be nice. My other issue with Mike Brown, and let me make sure this is clear. I think Mike Brown has done a good job. I think that there's clear improvements that I see with this team compared to last year and the last few years under Tibbs. We're more creative on offense. The ball does not stick as much, and it's an offense that empowers players, I feel like. It gives everybody the ability to, be their best and really strive for their best. I think that's why you see a guy like Mikal Bridges playing the way that he has, being extremely efficient. My only issue with Bridges is I need you to be a little bit more aggressive, especially in fourth quarters. The game that we lost down in Miami on Monday, Bridges is cooking and then no attempts in the fourth quarter. Especially with no Brunson, that can't happen. So I would like my coach to emphasize and say, hey, we're running this. Now, the Knicks aren't running a ton of plays. They're much more just having concepts and kind of playing like that Golden State type offense where, you're passing it into the post. The post is then being a facilitator. It's typically Karl Anthony Towns. A lot of handoffs out behind the three-point line. One of the things that I love that Mike Brown has done is he has not just said, hey, give it to Jalen and everybody run down the court and making him dribble the ball up against pressure every single possession. He talks about playing fast. We're doing that. I know the numbers say that, We're not one of the leaders or even the top half of the league when it comes to pace, but I personally see a team that is playing a lot faster. And with pace, it's the amount of possessions. So therefore, the extra possessions that you get for offensive rebounds are not counted. So overall, that stat can be a little bit, misleading. But if you watch this team compared to previous years, the pace has definitely stepped up. We just got to get to a different level on defense. I know that OG Anunoby, our best defender, is out. My other issue with Mike Brown is, can I get a couple more minutes for Diawara? He played 1 minute in the first game. He played 1 minute and 46 seconds in this game. So Monday, no OG, can barely get on the floor, gets on the floor, makes a steal. He's long, he's athletic, and he's got a defensive mindset. He's shown that he can shoot it a little bit, and he's definitely leapfrogged Pacome Dadier on the overall depth chart. But especially with OG out, I think that we could find some more minutes for him. Yabusele, he's 0 of 5 from 3, and that's glaring. Especially when this team just can't buy a bucket. But I actually thought that Yabusele gave, decent minutes yesterday. I thought that he did a decent job defensively. He was a team high plus 15. I did see that today on X. So there's something to be said there. But overall, Yabusele, he needs to get in shape and just overall get with it. And he needs to start hitting shots. Guy shot 40% last year. And, this year so far with the Knicks, it's got to be in the 20s. If he's shooting even in the 30s, I would be very surprised. He's got to be better. Bridges, need you to be more aggressive. Cat statistics. I mean, he did have 14 rebounds. He had 18 points. And he had 6 assists. And there was one point in the late third into fourth quarter where Cat was carrying us. That's the time that Brunson typically sits, and Cat is going to the rim. He's dunking on people. He's just really struggling from 3 right now. I mean, Cat shooting 6 of 16 overall and 1 of 6 from 3 is just something that you don't see. He's got by far the worst percentages that he's ever had in his entire career. So I think that he will progress to the mean, and he will end up being the player that he's always been, which is the best shooting big man in NBA history. So I'm not as worried about him. I realize that he has his deficiencies. He's definitely not a great defender, though. I feel like this year he's been a better defender than he was last year on the Knicks. His passing is so vital for this team, especially with him in like kind of that Draymond high post facilitator role. And his defensive rebounding is excellent. It's elite. So I'm not that worried about Cat. There's a lot of Cat hate out there. Knicks Twitter has been a toxic place recently, man. There's beef. There's this guy's got on a fake jersey. This guy is he can't get over the fact that we moved on from from Tibbs, or even going back to Julius. I root for the Knicks, man. There's different players that I like that come and go. I was furious about the Julius and Dante DiVincenzo for Cat trade initially, but I'm going to root for the team. I'm going to talk myself into it. I'm irrationally optimistic when it comes to this team, and I quickly got on board, and I now can say, after looking at it for a while, Cat's a better fit. He's a better fit for the Knicks. He's a better fit for the team. There needs to be more pick and roll 2-man game between him and Brunson. It's basically unstoppable. They ran it yesterday. They need to continue to run it more. Brunson has to be more willing after that initial pick to give it to Cat and then still be a weapon without the ball. Mike Brown spent his time under Steve Kerr in Golden State, and Steph Curry, he's the biggest threat when he doesn't have the ball. We've seen Brunson get a lot more pull-up threes, a lot more balls being swung to him where he's the guy who's wide open, an offensive rebound kicked out to him. And so I would just like to see him continue to embrace that. But it's the NBA. You're going to need a guy who you can give the ball to in an isolation situation and say, go score. And as we know, Brunson is one of the absolute best at that. I would say he's the second best in the entire league at it other than Shea. And it's close. And if it's close late in the game, give me Brunson. They don't give him clutch player of the year for no reason. Shamet, man, I think he's one of those players that he needs more minutes. But once you start getting him too high, once you start getting him, 35 plus, not so great. He didn't look so great on Monday against the Heat when you ask him to play 39 minutes. Last night, he plays 23. He plays good defense. He hits the 2 biggest shots of the game. That's right around that sweet spot for Shamet. 3 of 6 from the floor, 2 of 3. Waited until the very end to make his 2 biggest shots. Josh Hart, I think that Josh Hart is really starting to find his way within this offense. I think that Mike Brown's style benefits Josh Hart about as much as anybody, because instead of just parking him in the corner, he did hit 2 corner threes yesterday. He went 2 of 3 from behind. I'm sorry. No, Josh Hart went 3 of 4 from behind the arc, 5 of 10, 16 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, filling up the stat sheet. Every winning team has a Josh Hart. You hear Breen say that. It's so true. And, again, Josh Hart is another player where if you give Josh Hart around 30, 25, 30 minutes a game, great. You start asking him to play 35, 36, 37, it is such a steep drop-off. And now you start to see some of the warts. He's got to be a little bit smarter and, with the stupid fouls and with the getting up in the air and throwing the ball away. But overall, man, Josh Hart, sometimes he frustrates me with his reluctance to shoot, his inability to shoot. But thus far, I think Josh Hart has had a very solid season, especially, getting that injury out in Abu Dhabi and coming into the season, just a little bit out of rhythm. And overall, just honestly, he looked like he was a little bit out of shape. But he's rounding to form, and, I'm loving what I'm seeing from him. Jordan Clarkson, man. That cat, I love him off the bench. He comes in, he gets buckets. He's a good distributor. He can pass, and I just, he's exactly what our season would have been a lot different last year if Jordan Clarkson was getting all them campaign minutes. He's taller than campaign. He has a normal looking jump shot, and he's a much better facilitator. And the book on him was that he is a terrible defender. I ain't seen it. He's been a good defender this year, active hands, and also his 2-man game with Cat. He's very good at playing off of Cat, knowing when to pop out, when to cut, and we've seen some of the advantages that he can create. When Cat plays with that second unit, him and Jordan Clarkson, they got a good little thing going. Mitchell Robinson. I think yesterday you see Mitch play 21 minutes. He's been playing more in that like 16 to 18 range. At the end, he looked a little bit spent. He did. And at the end of the game, you want him in there for rebounds, but if he gets a rebound, they're just immediately going to foul him, and you're just praying that he can make at least one. And quite often, he's going to go there. He's going to have 2 darts that hit the front of the rim or off the back iron and don't even have a chance of going in. So that's something that Mike Brown has to really be smart about moving forward. The defense and the rebounding are great, but you can't put yourself in a situation where they can just hack this guy and it's basically a lost trip. You stop the clock and give the other team the ball back, and we haven't added any points to our score. So Knicks definitely have some work to do. But at the end of the day, them not playing their best ball and being 9-5, this next game against Orlando, this upcoming Saturday, that's a big game to me. Orlando beat us. They are the only team to beat us at the Garden. Orlando's going to be missing. Are we still saying that Paolo Banchero is their best player? I think Paolo's good. There's a lot of numbers that say that team plays better without him. I honestly think that Franz Wagner is a better player overall right now. I think Desmond Bain is the ultimate just do it all, you know, maybe not have the most flashy, plays or stats, but is a guy who consistently contributes to winning. And he looks like a running back, like an NFL running back. Dude is jacked. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out when it comes to Orlando. I think Orlando still missing a guard who's a real shooter. Suggs can't shoot. Great defender, good intangibles, but he can't shoot. But yeah, man, Knicks, they'll be all right. They'll be all right. This next game against Dallas, it's going to be very interesting to me. I'm sorry, not against Dallas, against Orlando, because I hope that they come out and they've got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder because of the way they lost to Orlando last time. It's a Saturday game. It's 5:00 Eastern. I just want to see them come out and be professional and have their minds right. Dottier being totally out of the rotation, Huck Porty being out of the rotation, Kolick being out of the rotation. I'm not even mad at Mike Brown for that because honestly, Dottier, he's got the body. You feel like he's got decent shooting for him, but he's shown since preseason that he's not ready. Huck Porty is a guy who it seems like when he gets minutes, he shows flashes, but another guy that the more he's on the floor, you start to be able to see the cracks, see the wrinkles, and be like, I don't know. Kolick, I'm starting to believe more and more that he's just not an NBA guard. He's not an NBA caliber guard. A lot of people want us to play the kids, but first and foremost, you got to get wins. And there has to be a balance. You cannot put everything on getting wins in November. And then when it comes to the playoffs and you need some of these guys to be able to give you contributions, first and foremost, they don't have the experience. Second of all, you haven't seen them play and you haven't, seen them on the floor with other guys and knowing what some of the best matchups, some of the best combinations are. It was my biggest criticism of Tibbs last year is that, when your back is against the wall in an Eastern Conference Finals is the first time that you're trying something new. And overall, Mike Brown, that's one of my biggest criticisms is that I need to see a little bit more Diawara. And I need to see just a little bit more, not creativity, almost kind of the opposite. I need to see guys being a little bit more deliberate on offense sometimes. I get it. We want to have concepts. We want to be able to, just play free flowing, fast, get an advantage, learning off of each other and how we play, strong cuts, dribble handoffs, all that is fine and well. Sometimes where you just need a bucket, man. Sometimes you need a bucket and you need to be able to call something that you feel like is going to get your guys in a good position to get that bucket or at least get a good shot. So I do think in certain situations we need to be a little bit more deliberate. And a lot of the threes that we missed yesterday were good threes. But sometimes as a basketball player, you have to know, us as a team, me individually, that guy on my team, whatever the case may be, hey, we need to figure out a way to get like an easy bucket here or something and get some things going. When you're firing up the threes and they're not hitting, there has to be a point where you say, we're not just going to swing it around the perimeter and chuck up the first open three that we got. We're going to, have the ball cross court, get some feet in the paint and spray, and make sure that the threes that we're taking are quality threes. And sometimes when they're not going down, you just need to see the ball go through the bucket. Get yourself a layup, get yourself to the free throw line, and, continue to shoot those threes. I love the fact that we're shooting them at higher volume. I do think sometimes we get a little bit three happy. And maybe that's just me being an old man and the basketball purist in me. But you look at that Celtics team last year against the Knicks, and that is, in my opinion, one of the major reasons that they lost that series is that they got to a point where they weren't hitting threes and they just continue to chuck them up, and it allowed the Knicks to take control of that series, to be able to come back in a couple of those games. I don't want the Knicks to fall into that same trap. You look at the Knicks and how they came back in games 1 and 2 of that Celtics series, both games, them being down by 20, upwards of 20 points in the fourth quarter. And this is exactly what I mean by, hey, we're playing an inferior team without some of their top guys. It ends up being close, but we still come out with the win. And I think there is something to teams learning how to win close and tight games at the end. All right, that's my Knicks rant. Look, man, this is my thing, so I'm gonna talk about the things that are important to me. If you know me, you know that the New York Knicks are very, very important to me. There is a Knicks flag in my front yard. There is a Knicks license plate cover that is waiting for my plates to be delivered so it can go on the back of the new ride. So, hey, man, we all Knicks all the time over here, but I digress. One thing I noticed yesterday, man, Klay Thompson. Yo, Klay looks like he's been fucking Megan Thee Stallion. Yo, my man Klay, his fade was a little bit tighter than you. It was a little bit higher, a little bit tighter. You used to have like this little taper on the side. Nah, he had the fade a little bit, a little bit higher, real tight on the sides. His waves were a little bit wavier. You could see he's spending some more time in a do-rag than he typically does. And his legs were a little weak. All of those things to me sound like you've been fucking Megan Thee Stallion. I'm sorry, bro, but yo, man, I gotta keep it real with you, Klay. Klay, he threw up an air ball yesterday. You don't never see Klay air ball back in the day. I know he's getting older. I know he's not playing with Steph Curry anymore. But Megan got a hold on your boy, Klay. Good for him, though, man. Good for him. Yo, this whole thing with Draymond going up to this guy in the stands. So Draymond misses a couple layups, gets his own rebound, and there's a guy in the stands who is right there in the front underneath the basket, and he starts chanting Angel Reese, which I think is hilarious. I think it's a great chant. I think it's a great way to troll Draymond. And so Draymond goes up to him and basically gets face to face with the guy and says like, yo, you're not going to call me that. Man, if I was that dude, I would have said everything I possibly could to get Draymond to do some dumb shit and even just touch me once. And if he touched me, I would have acted like I was dying. They would have taken me out in a stretcher. Draymond after the game says something about how, yo, I'm a grown man. I got 4 kids and another one on the way. You're not going to call me, no woman's name or anything. Yo, Draymond, shut the fuck up. I'm so tired of this dude, man. I mean, yo, first and foremost, look, he's a fan. He's not calling you out. I guess I was about to say he's not calling you out of your name. He's not calling you anything wild and crazy and profane. I was in the Garden back in the day when Knicks fans used to chant Cheryl, Cheryl when we were playing against the Indiana Pacers and Reggie Miller. This guy yelling Angel Reese to you, I know it's impossible not to hear it, but you have to act as if you do not hear it if you are an NBA player. And you definitely cannot be going towards this guy, getting in his face, going back and forth and creating a confrontation. That's crazy. Reports came out that the league warned him about it, and they should warn him about it. And if he does some shit like that again, he should be suspended. Draymond's an asshole, yo. He just is. Draymond's an asshole. I thought the shit that he said about Cat last year, being scared of Jimmy Butler, and that's why he wasn't at the game, when in fact Cat was with his longtime girlfriend Jordan Woods, who had just lost somebody very close to her, and then Draymond knowing that and still doubling down on it. Come on, man. That shit is weak to me. And I think Draymond is a great player for what he does. He's a great defender. He's a great facilitator from the high post. He gave and continues to give that Golden State team a level of toughness that they need, especially with the finesse players that they have had, specifically when they had the Splash Brothers. He's the perfect complement to Steph, and they clearly have a symbiotic relationship that has, led them to 4 championships. Draymond, whether you like it or not, is a Hall of Famer. Eye test, Hall of Famer? No. Accomplishments, basketball IQ, when you really sit back and look at his entire body of work and what he gives to that team, he's a Hall of Famer. He's also a Hall of Fame douchebag. The shit with Jordan Poole, the championship that he cost his team by hitting LeBron in the nuts, and just his overall act. And I realize it's a thin line. They say there's a thin line between genius and crazy. There's a thin line between enforcer and asshole. But there's also been players like a Kevin Garnett, who was as much of an enforcer and a better defender and just an overall better player than Draymond. Yet he didn't consistently go over the line like Draymond has. And he just, honestly, man, he just seems like a piece of shit individual. He's got too many things that he's done that for me, it's just too hard to look past. Similar to another topic that is very far away from this one that we'll talk about a little bit later. But yeah, man, fuck Draymond. I just think that guy, man, he's got a horrible attitude when it comes to his own personal accountability. And I'm sorry if I'm an NBA player, unless you are talking about my family, and even then, what am I going to do? Fight you? I'm going to go grab a ref and say, hey, man, this is what's going on. Let's get this guy out of here. We've seen like LeBron do shit like that before. But the idea of going over and going back and forth with somebody like that, come on, man, you got to be more mature than that. Part of your job is to ignore the crowd. I'm starting to get very scared that Wemby is going to be one of the biggest what ifs in all of sports, because he now has a calf injury. He's out for a couple weeks. He'll be reevaluated. You know, whenever you see calf strain, everybody immediately gets scared of the potential, Achilles rupture. And Wemby, he comes out this year. He's a little bit stronger. He worked out with Hakeem Olajuwon, and he looks like the greatest basketball player in the history of the world. He can do everything. Defensively, I've seen possessions where he guards like 4 different people. Offensively, what can't he do? If anything, I just would like to see him be more aggressive. But overall, the thing that has always been a scare when it comes to him is injury. When you see that slight frame, it immediately pops into your head, man, I hope this guy can be healthy. Now you see the calf strain. Last year he had the blood clots, which is just, random, has nothing to do with his size. I guess it's probably hard, pumping blood to all his different extremities when he's that long. My daughter, who's young, she just turned 6, and she, the only thing she usually says about basketball on the TV is, the Knicks again. She was walking past the screen one time. My son and I, we were watching Spurs versus somebody. It was early in the season. I forget who. And she just glanced at the screen and said, he's tall. It jumps off the screen like that. And the fact that he is dribbling the ball through his legs, behind his back, crossing a dude over, making him, change his direction multiple times. Yo, dude he's nice. He legitimately is he has a chance to be the best player of all time. And I never say that lightly. You got Jordan, you got LeBron, you got Steph, who, whether or not you want to say he's one of the greatest of all time, I don't think you can argue that he is definitely one of the most, if not the most influential player of all time. And Wemby has the potential to do all of that and more. Can he stay healthy? I hope so, man. As an NBA fan, as a sports fan, I hope so. I want to see it. Even if he's not on my team and he's going to dominate the league, I'd rather see that than always wonder, what he could have been, and look at these highlights and say, yo, look what this guy was doing in his size, but he could just never stay healthy. I really hope that's not the case with him. Let's talk about boxing. This Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua fight. Man, respect to Jake Paul. This guy has all the money in the world, had all the money in the world before he ever decided to become a boxer. And he has now decided to take this extremely seriously. He clearly is always working on his craft. You see that he's in fantastic shape. He's continued to improve. He's knocked out some MMA fighters. He's knocked out some, former NBA players. But now, when Gervonta Davis, who he had 100-pound advantage on, gets caught up in some legal trouble and ends up having to drop off the card, he pivots to Anthony Joshua, one of the most feared heavyweights in the game. A guy who made Francis Ngannou look silly and ended up knocking him out. I got to give Jake at least the credit for just the overall courage. And honestly, I don't see how he can lose. It's a win-win for him. If he even comes close to looking competent, you're going to give him all the credit in the world. If he gets flatlined by this guy, Anthony Joshua, you're still going to be like, yo, who would think that he would even have a chance? And if he somehow finds a way to win or make it really close, Jake Paul is a legitimate boxer. Is he world class? Is he championship material? No. He is a legitimate boxer, and you have to give that man credit for taking on one of the most physically grueling and dangerous sports when he was already paid. Most guys look at boxing as a way out. Most guys, have to do it their entire life to be able to get to the point where they're in big fights with big names. Now, Jake Paul, his celebrity lended to that. This is where we're about to find out how much of a real fighter this guy is. But I respect him for, taking on the endeavor. I respect him for taking this fight. I respect him for what he's done for women's boxing, where he has consistently put them on huge cards and given them and been able to put them in a position to be able to get huge money under his overall card and his overall outfit. Respect Jake Paul, man. Anybody who's got anything other than respect for this guy, for what he's done in the boxing world, I don't get it. You're just a hater. The Jets, they play Baltimore this week, and Lamar Jackson, I know he's on the injury report, but many people expect him to play. The Jets are going to be starting Tyrod Taylor. I am on the record saying they should be starting Brady Cook. You know what you're going to get out of Taylor. I know that Aaron Glenn is trying to win games. He's trying to show his team that we're still in the fight. The Jets are now 2-8, and I just say, you know what Tyrod Taylor is. Let's see what we can get out of Brady Cook. Let's see if this kid's got anything. Justin Fields, he has been benched. You got to bench him. I'm sorry. Justin Fields, he's not the guy. He's shown over and over again that he is not the guy. So if I'm the Jets, I'm trading up for this guy Mendoza if I'm not in position to take him come this draft. And I think the Jets have to continue to swing for the fences when it comes to quarterback until they hit. And as we know, hitting is not just about drafting a guy. It's about going and developing the guy. The Jets have not shown the ability to do that since, you could say Sanchez, but as much as they developed him, they also ruined him. And, since Joe Namath, the Jets haven't found that answer. And I am not confident in this regime's ability to find that answer because they thought that Justin Fields was a better option than Aaron Rodgers, which I never agreed with. It never made sense. And now I think we can pretty comfortably say I was right. All right, let's make a huge pivot and a huge shift right now. For those of you that know me and have followed me, you know that politically I am independent. I'm a registered independent, but I also will be honest and say I typically vote for Democrats. But I am a true independent. I really am. I do not consider myself a Democrat in the slightest. I do think that when it comes to politics, I have a slightly more progressive mindset. But if you also know me, you know that I am a card-carrying conspiracy theorist. I was a jet fuel doesn't melt steel beams guy back before it was cool. Zeitgeist the movie. If you've ever seen it, you know what I'm talking about. I was an early adopter back when it was hard to find. I was out there talking to people, letting them know what's good. And one of the things that has just captivated me is the Jeffrey Epstein case, his unaliving of himself in a cell with no cameras and no guards and a cellmate who is like a jacked, roided out former cop who murked 4 people and buried them in his backyard. And you had Donald Trump come out and say, hey, we are running on a few different things, but one of the major things he talked about over and over again was making those Epstein files and his communications and emails and things like that public. Well, then he gets into office and he not only doesn't do that, but he calls it a hoax. One week it's we got all the files right on our desk. The next week is there's nothing there. It's a total hoax. Now we've seen the emails, we've seen the countless pictures, and we've seen the birthday cards written and doodled by Trump himself. And it's clear that these guys were not just acquaintances; they were friends. And they spent a lot of time around each other, a lot of time with each other. And according to Epstein, he had all the dirt to be able to take Donnie down. And so now we see that the files are going to be released. Trump makes a total 180 and says, yo, I want to, go ahead, let's get these files out, after doing everything he can for the last 6 to 8 months to make sure they don't come out, including trying to intimidate people to not vote for the files to be released, and trying to hold up swearing in officials, doing everything he can. And all of a sudden he makes the switch and says, all right, let's go ahead and bring it out. Some people say that's just due to the overall pressure that's been put on him. Quite frankly, I think y'all are dumb if y'all don't realize that the cover up and the fix is in. There is no way that these files are going to come out and they're going to be extremely damning to President Trump. I think it is very clear that whether it be going in and making some things classified, or scrubbing certain names, or just straight up omitting and taking out certain parts of it, that they are not going to let this come out and implicate Donald Trump or probably many of any Republicans. And to me, I don't care if you're Republicans, Democrats, whether you work in finance, whatever the case may be, all this needs to come out. And you finally have some of the larger news outlets acknowledging the fact that Epstein was an intelligence asset, an Israeli intelligent asset. Now, let's keep one thing 100% straight here. Being critical of Israel does not mean that you are anti-Semitic. Those two things are not connected. Anybody who tries to connect those things, anybody who, anytime you say anything about Israel, immediately says, oh, you're being anti-Semitic, they're not being genuine, and they're trying their best to cover some shit up. Because quite frankly, if you ask me, there's been a genocide that has occurred when it comes to the Palestinian people. And it is clear to me that they have so many of our U.S. politicians in their pocket, either via blackmail or via having funded them and now getting their returns. I mean, it's clear, yo. It's so clear. And you look at a guy like Epstein, who his entire shtick was to get these people, whether it be at the island or in his penthouse, and get them to be in compromising situations and now be able to influence these highly influential individuals. It is clear to me that that is a playbook that has been run by U.S., Israeli, and probably many other government entities that are looking to control and advance their agenda. Clear. Go watch Godfather 2. They do it in Godfather 2. The senator does not want to play ball with the Corleones, has no desire to, and is kind of brazen about it. What do? They get him in a whorehouse. They have him with a whore. He then ends up passing out, and he wakes up and she's dead. They come in and say, we'll take care of this for you. And now, all of a sudden, he's an ally. I think that playbook has been run forever. We know there's the declassified CIA documents. I think it's called Midnight Cowboy was the operation, where we know for a fact that they were drugging politicians via prostitutes and then using the information and or the footage to be able to control them. If you think that they just abandon that and they never do things like that anymore, you're crazy. So whatever ends up coming out here with the release of these files, take it with a grain of salt. I do not believe that they're just releasing them and they're not going to do anything to either retract or manipulate the information that is within them. Let's make another quick pivot. If you know me, I got a lot of interests. I got a lot of things that I'm into that I like to talk about. Yo, there is not one hip hop song in the Billboard Top 40, which hasn't happened in, I want to say 20 plus years. Yet, in my opinion, it's been one of the best years in hip hop in quite some time. Mass Appeal, Nas has come out and said, hey man, we're going to give some of these legends an opportunity to, come out on the scene and drop good music and not be out here necessarily trying to sell records, trying to get streams, trying to go viral. And we've had some really good music. Excuse me. The Clips album is an absolute classic. When it first came out, I knocked it for like 2 months straight. Only it, every track. Malice is back. Push been doing his thing. The production is fantastic. What an album. Fantastic album. I know they're up for, I want to say 5 Grammys. I think it's the album of the year, personally. But then you have the Raekwon album. Lloyd Banks is dropping some good projects. Mobb Deep album. You got that Alfredo joint with Freddie Gibbs and Alchemist. It's been a good year for hip hop, and we're still all anticipating and hoping for the Nas and DJ Premier. I have not seen a release date. To me, that's a dream come true. For 41-year-old Nick, going back to 12-year-old Nick, an entire album of Nas and Primo, I can't wait, man. And the fact that they're taking their time, that Nas and Kanye album, I liked it more than most people, but it seemed very rushed. And then we end up finding out that it was very rushed. I like the fact that Nas and Primo are taking their time. Nas is like, just featuring on a lot of these albums that have been coming out under the Mass Appeal record label, and he's just been doing his thing. Nas has continued to evolve and stay relevant and stay good throughout his entire career, and especially on this back end. And I think it's super impressive. You look at a guy like Hove. Hove had a great run. He moved into his CEO role, and he don't really make music no more. Nas is still continuing to put out music. Him and Hit Boy just had their run, and I can't wait. I can't wait to see what this him and Primo album is going to be about. So I know that hip hop is not getting necessarily the love on the Billboard charts right now, but I think it's alive and well, and I've really enjoyed a lot of these projects that have come out this year. All right, let's go ahead and end with a little bit of Ask Nick. So if you have a question, I don't care what it's about, but if you have a question and you want to get a raw, unfiltered answer, it could be about being a dad. It could be about hip hop, sports, Knicks, Mets, Jets, whatever. go on the Instagram at Independent Nick. That's Independent N-I-C. No K. Go on Instagram, Independent Nick. First and foremost, follow. Secondly, go ahead and ask away. Ask me a question in the DMs. And every week, every Thursday, we come to you just like Martin and Seinfeld, and I will answer one of your questions. I will keep it anonymous. Unless for some reason you really want your information out there. But now I just think it's overall best I keep it anonymous. But the question comes from a dad. And he says, Dear Nick, my son plays video games nonstop and hates sports. I was an athlete my entire life, but he's not into sports at all and would rather watch Dancing with the Stars with his mother than a game. I always thought he'd eventually catch the bug, but now he's 11 years old and still refuses to give any sport a try. What do I do? This is an interesting one. I have 2 daughters and I have 1 son. My son is 9 and he is about as into sports as a 9-year-old can be. He plays basketball, he plays football, he plays baseball, and he excels at all 3. And he sits and watches all the games with me. He's super into it. I also have an older daughter who is into softball, has been forever. They all started playing soccer. I coach them in everything. I don't coach my daughter anymore. She and I realized that that wasn't the best thing for our relationship. So I cheer her on for the sidelines. I'm super involved, but I don't coach her. I coach my son in everything. Now, I know when you read that question and you say, he'd rather watch Dancing with the Stars with his mother than a game, some people might be like, well, maybe you're not being honest with yourself. But my son watches Dancing with the Stars with his mother. But still loves sports and is an athlete. All my kids all perform in the play as well. So at the end of the day, I think it's important that we raise people who are well-rounded. As far as how to get your son into sports, my question for you is, how into sports are you? There's a lot of people who are out here and will say, oh, I was an athlete back in the day and I love sports. There's levels. I'm a fanatic. If I got the TV on, most of the time, it's going to be some sort of sporting event. And I think what it starts with first and foremost is, how is your relationship with your son? If you're a father and you have a son and you're really into just about anything, if that son looks up to you and he thinks that you are the greatest thing in the world, as most sons do when it comes to looking up to their dads, quite often, almost always, he's going to want to follow in your footsteps. He's going to be interested in the same things you are. I do another podcast. We're coming up on our 100th episode soon with me and my dad. It's called He Did This to Me. It's a sport podcast about a father and son who happen to be mostly optimistic Knicks, Mets, and Jets fans. And I say he did this to me because clearly he gave me a tough life with those fandoms. And I'm 41 years old. I still want to be just like my dad. So it's first about having the relationship with your son where he looks up to you. And then are you really that guy who is so into sports, or are you just a guy like most guys who says, oh, I love sports? There's a difference. There's levels. And personally, I don't think you can force them. I think it has to be something that they love and that they want to do. And if they do, not all kids are the kids that you can really push. Like I said, my daughter and I, that's not how we get down. My son, I can be super serious with him, be on top of him. We had football practice tonight. He made a couple mistakes and I got after him. It's not the same with everybody. But you have to figure out a way to figure out whatever it is that your son loves and facilitate that. And it might not ever be sports. If he's already 11 and he's not into them at all, I don't know. It might not happen. But figure out whatever the boy is into. I don't care what it is. Support him. And you know, hey, I'm very lucky. that my son has the same interests I do. I don't think it's strictly luck. I think a lot of it has to do with just the overall relationship I fostered with him and with my own obsession and him following in my footsteps. But I promise you, if he was into something different and he loved it and he was willing to be passionate about it and work hard and be, consistently curious and interested in it, I would support him in that too. So just love the kid up, set an example, be the type of person that he wants to be like. And then after that, kind of got to let the chips fall where they may. Hey, man, I'm going to be coming to you every single Thursday. We are committing. I'm saying it now. I'm saying it to you. I'm committing to you. I'm committing to myself. I'm going to be coming to you every single Thursday like Seinfeld and Martin. And I want you guys in the comments to ask questions, comment, tell me, if you don't like my shirt or my hat, or you think I'm hat fishing. I'm not hat fishing, by the way. I got hair, man. I got hair. But whatever the case may be, we're gonna rock, man. I want to see y'all every Thursday. If you're on the replay, gang, make sure that you comment, and just tell me what you're thinking. And then don't forget, go to Instagram, and if you have any questions, you need some advice, just throw that question in my DMs, and I will go through them and I will pick the most interesting and unique one every single week, and I'll let you know what I think. Not that you should care, but I just want to have some fun with you guys, man. Appreciate all the love. Hit that like, hit that subscribe. It is available over on the different streaming platforms when it comes to being able to just listen. He did this to me every single week, gets recorded and gets put out. So you can definitely like and subscribe, share. Appreciate all the love. It's your boy, man. Independent Nick. Peace.